morning, and congratulations for being here either in person or online. It's kind of nice having this right in front of your face, huh? It's handy. I have to look this way, then this way, and then this way, and this way. So it's really nice how it just stayed in my face. I have to tell you, Sensei gave me the greatest seat in the house. Like sitting right here. Like, have you, my back, I have a knot, not a muscle knot, but there's a knot for the hakama that's right here. So I push back on the wall, like, oh, that feels so good. Oh, it's the perfect place. Oh, you should all get one of these things. Let me tell you, it feels so, I need one of these things. But thank you very much for attending today's service. You know, one of the things I think about with my aunt is, you know, I keep her in my heart constantly on a daily basis as part of when I do the Hatsumizu, which is the offering of the first water. Every morning I take it down. She's right there at the main altar. I just have a separate little kind of altar on the side in this alcove for my ancestors, specifically my ancestors as well. And so I'm constantly thinking of her. I've always have her in my heart. And there's so much to think about. When I always try to remember the stories that Grace Kodama and Dorothy Kodama used to share with me. I think it was Grace. I don't know which sister shared this with me, but they shared that when they were little. So after the war, my aunt actually stayed at the Honolulu church, and they were with them constantly. And the one thing that Kodama kids loved to do was to push my aunt's buttons, because she was so sweet, she was so kind. And then she never got upset. They never saw her get upset, so they tried to push her, and they would do little things to irritate her, and she would never, and only one time, they succeeded only one time, and they were so excited, like, we got her, and I was, like, why would you do that? But then again, I understand, they were just little kids at that time, and part of her, parole was, you know, she had to be somewhere where she could be monitored, easily monitored, and so Kodama Sensei then took her in, and I'm sure she had and it shows that they had such a very close relationship. The Kodama family had such a close relationship. But today, I wanted to focus on something that I don't think many of us think about when we think about our founding ministers, or maybe the second head ministers of our church, or whoever has taken over the church, and that is, what can we learn from these people? What can we learn from Haruko Sensei, her life and everything? And so I kind of broke this up into three. Now we can learn a whole bunch, totally learn a whole bunch from her. I kind of wanted to break it up into three different things. So let me start with a teaching from the Kyoten. Wait, I'm so sorry, I have to take this off. I forgot my other pair of glasses back at the house. Let me read the first teaching. So this comes from the Jinkyu Kyogoroku. And it says, after being saved from a desperate situation or misfortune, everyone says that they will never forget the blessings they receive. However, people tend to be unaware of the divine blessings that they receive daily. Regardless if people are alive or dead, they are always receiving Kami's blessings. One more time. After being saved from a desperate situation or misfortune, everyone says that they will never forget the blessings they receive. However, people tend to be unaware of the divine blessings that they receive daily. Regardless if people are alive or dead, they are always receiving Kami's blessings. And so I think when we think about Haruko Sensei, you know, really, so first of all, my dad really didn't have much of, he always says he didn't have much of a relationship with his sister, because it's a huge age gap. It's a very big age gap between his eldest sister and himself, because he's the baby of the family. And she's the I think the eldest. I have to double check with my list. Because there are 9 of them. There are 9 children total. So, so really, he had no interaction with his sister. He just knew his sister was a minister. But upon receiving Okage, especially with her eyes, you know, the family shares a story that she was kicked in the face by a horse, which really rendered her to have these really thick glasses. And at that time, it was really made of glass. It was very thick. They were very heavy. And even with these thick glasses, she could not read. She had to have this she had to have whatever she needed to read up close. It wasn't until she received that amazing miracle that allowed her to lessen the thickness of her glasses. less than that thickness, and she would be able to read at a what we are capable of doing, to read normally. That she realized just the blessings and favors that she had been receiving from Kami-sama. And so when asked if she would save people, become a minister, save people, her initial reaction was yes, but she needed to she wanted to have her family understand what she was planning to do. My Aunt Frances shares a story that she ended up, at that time there was no airplanes, so they had to take a boat. So she took a boat all the way back to Kohala on the island of Hawaii, and it was there her father came to pick her up, and just at the sight of her daughter, seeing this, only this, because previously she had been writing letters, I've joined this religion, please, would you practice with me in this faith? That she kept sending letters, and no one would believe her. They thought she was crazy. It wasn't until she went back to Kohala that her father, seeing her face for the first time, said, yes, we will. Apparently her father cried, her mother cried, just by looking at her eyes. They knew that she had been saved. Interestingly enough, it was my Aunt Frances who said she thought it was a lie, it was a hoax. She yelled, she screamed at my aunt, at Haruko Sensei, saying, you're crazy, why are you doing this? This is so stupid. She took I think it was an iron skillet, and hit her on the back of her head, saying, stop this foolishness. Why are you becoming a minister? There's no need to become. We'll take care of you. However, even amongst that persecution by her own, I think that's a fair word to say, call it a persecution by her own sister, she still went forth to become a minister. And slowly our family became one in this faith. But here's what when we talk about that salvation, I think in so many ways this faith had helped her, not just her physical self, but her spiritual self and herself as a human being. When you think about it, everyone kept saying she was so demure, she was so quiet, she was so patient. When you think about the fact that she wanted to kill herself because she had no self-confidence in herself, that says a great deal. It says a great deal. And somehow through this faith, through mediation with Sensei, Remasai Kodama, she was able to find herself. Now, I just came back from a 4-hour flight, 4-hour delayed flight, and so while at the airport during this 4-hour delayed flight, I don't know, something made me look at the documents that I was able to get when I went to the National Archives in College Park. And for some reason, I just kept reading, and I don't know why, I just kept reading it, and I kept reading, and one of the things that really popped out at me was this demure, this quiet, this meek, this weak, this woman with no self-confidence that based off of stories I've heard and what we know about her, really changed because of this faith. When you read the documents, she had her court case amongst all these white people, trying to intimidate her, trying to get her to say things that would allow them to incriminate her, to keep her in internment camps. And as I kept reading, she just stood her ground. They asked her things like, are you more loyal to Japan or loyal to the United States? She says, I'm loyal to both. And and you have to understand, this is the funniest part about this whole thing. My parents have always said, and I don't know, I'm not old enough, I've never met her, she died the year before I was born. They all said that she spoke perfect English. She was perfectly bilingual. I don't know. But everyone I know has always said she's perfectly bilingual. In the camps, she requested for a translator. She requested for a translator. I want a translator. And so she would hear this translate, knowing that she could hear what they're talking about on that side. Knowing. She made a bunch of white people look so stupid, it's not even funny. I thought it was hilarious. Actually, my father said that when I asked him, I thought you said Auntie spoke perfect English. And my mom was like, yeah, I could talk with her. I don't speak any Japanese. And then he started laughing because he was reading his sister's file and goes, oh, she made them look so stupid, yeah? She speaks perfect English. She understands English. And so she's listening to what they're saying while the translator's talking this way. I'm like, oh, this is so interesting. So there's very few references to the translator inside of her documents, inside of her transcripts. But amongst all of that, they kept trying to trick her into saying things, to get her to incriminate herself, as she just stood there. She stood her ground. She knew exactly what she wanted. She knew exactly what was important. She was also a rebel in her own right when she wrote to her brother, Thomas Takahashi, and said, "Why are you joining the army? Don't join the army. This is a country that has just put in a U.S. citizen in a concentration camp. Why are you doing this? Don't join the army." My uncle ended up joining the army, so did my dad. But she stood her ground. She found herself in this faith, and she found healing for herself. You know, I think it's so important, you know, to realize that this salvation doesn't come in the form of just physical healing, but also in the spiritual, and for ourselves, our mental and psychological, and for our own beings, we have healing there. I think that's so important, and that's one of the biggest lessons I've learned from her. And you know, in my position, actually, it's been 4 years since, this month makes 4 years since I left for San Diego. I can see myself slowly starting to grow. I can see myself with the issues that I have to deal with especially with my church. The things that, and then the people who come and who seek mediation, you know, I'm so grateful that I'm finding more about who I am, growing into the person I'm supposed to be growing into. And I really believe that salvation takes place through faith, through mediation, to be able to find myself, through constant communication with Kami-sama. And I really believe that's really what my aunt had done in her life. The second thing I think we can learn from her is humility. And so let me read two teachings back to back. Page 2. This first teaching comes from Fukushima Gihei in the second Gorikai. Tenchi Kanu no Kami is the parent kami of all people. Why would Kami let his precious children suffer? When you have your own children, you will understand this well. Let me repeat that again. Tenchi Kanu no Kami is the parent kami of all people. Why would Kami let his precious children suffer? When you have your own children, you will understand this well. The second teaching comes from the third Gorikai, the Shinkun. You should be aware that Kami protects you in the same way as you love your child. You should be aware that Kami protects you the same way as you love your child. I think Hyoso-sama is the ultimate, or the source of teachings, or the founder, is really the ultimate, the epitome of these two teachings. The humility that he exuded, he never said, I was the best. He never said, no, this is the right religion. If you follow Japanese religions in Japan, these new religions, you'll see that there's some founders who have said, no, I am God. Some people who will say, I am the best. But Kyoso-sama never did that. His humility was just amazing. And don't mistake humility for weakness. I think there's a humility is a huge strength. He never forgot his past. He never forgot his parents. After being adopted, he would return back to visit his birth parents. In fact, there's a story that says that, you know, he saw the slippers that his father had worn had become tattered. So he took those home and he left his brand new ones for his father. You know, remembering that is so, that humility, where you are from, that base, I think is so important for all of us. Haruko Sensei is the exact same way. The stories that I've heard, I've learned, you know, when she was here at this church, she would, at least once a month, she would close up this church. Church would be completely closed. She would catch the bus, and at that time, now we have cars. Doesn't seem that far, right? Maybe a half an hour ride to Honolulu or 45-minute ride to Honolulu. Don't seem that bad. Try catching the bus back in those days. So you're talking about a 2-3 hour ride. going from here all the way to Honolulu. Her first stop was always the Honolulu church, to give thanks, to see her spiritual parents. And then she would take the bus. She never asked for a ride. She took the bus to visit her parents in Makali, to visit, spend time with her ohana. And it would be later, and she used to take the bus back to Wahiawa until her brother said, "That's really far. I'll drive you back. That's really far. I'll drive you back." To remember your foundations and where you're from, to humble yourself. I think, even though she came into herself, she knew who she was. She was so humble. And I find that to be so important. So presently, one of the biggest things that I've learned from Haruko Sensei, I've had to include in my own life. The San Diego church's parent church is completely different, totally different. If you kind of heard on this side when we were doing the Sosen Sanji, I have I don't know what you call it. It's kind of like this intonation that I was doing, and I did my best not to let it out. But as part of my parent churches, their children churches kind of do this too. With that particular prayer, there's a intonation that goes on. There's this pattern that goes on. And it's something that I've learned, and it's part of me. And I've done that just as part of my respect for where this church comes from. It's not my original parent church. I came from the Honolulu church to San Diego. The Honolulu church's parent church is the Amagi church. And yet, San Diego is the Tamamizu church, where it has taken a while to develop a relationship with my new parent minister. I'm sort of the adopted child. And as Reverend Edna Matsuoka shared with me, you're sort of like Kyoso-sama. You went from one family to another family. But you've never forgotten your roots. You've never forgotten Honolulu Church. You always go back to Honolulu Church. And for that, I'm really grateful. I had a wonderful, wonderful role model to model that. To model where my roots are from. And to never forget my roots and where I'm from. And so I ask you to think about that. What does it mean to be humble? What does it mean to remember your roots? What does it mean to remember and honor your foundation? And I think with my father here today, she is the Takahashi family's source, the origins. Without her, I don't think my father would be married for very long. I think he would have been divorced. Without Haruko Sensei, I wouldn't be here. Without Haruko Sensei, none of us would be in this room at this moment. There would be no Wahiawa Church. Without her, my family would not have entered into Konko at one crack. And the blessings and the favor that we have received as an ohana is just amazing. It's just amazing. And the blessings and favors I have received, in fact, my believers as well have received, have been amazing. Being at the San Diego church, I have to work full-time because our congregation is small. And I can write in the prayer notebook, which is something that Sensei does. He writes in the prayer notebook. And unfortunately, I don't have the time to pray. A couple of years ago, I struggled with that. I said, I'm not doing a good job as a minister. And I said to the fifth Kongo-sama Otodoke, sharing my thoughts, I said, maybe I should quit. This isn't the right thing. I'm not doing the right thing. Seeking guidance. And then he responded by saying, the moment you leave the Otodoke or the prayer notebook on the altar, don't think about it again. Leave it there and never think about it again. Meaning to leave everything to the hands of Kami-sama. Konko Daiji will be here praying for you. At the same time, so it's one of the traditions I do at my church. I do leave the Otodokecho, the prayer notebook there. But then I ask Haruko Sensei, please, on my behalf, you have a lot of time on your hands. Would you mind praying for me? Because I need to go to sleep. I need to wake up the next morning. I can tell you, there's a believer in Mexico who has just amazing, one blessing after another favor, after another favor, after another favor, after another favor. It's crazy. I don't have that kind of virtue. I don't have that kind of power. But to know that Haruko Sensei is helping me in that sense, I'm so grateful. I'm so humbled by that. Lastly, is the topic of Ishin, or single-heartedness. Let me read you this fun teaching, if I can find it. Oh. Teaching says this: people exist because of kami, and kami exists because of people. Therefore, you should pray to kami about everything, including sickness and problems. Whether it is an emergency or not, practicing faith is to have a heart like kami in your everyday life. Praying to kami by putting your hands together is not the only way to practice faith. A single heart means one heart. So be sure you do not go astray by having a double heart. Depending only on Tenchi Kata no Kami is having a single heart. You should be single-hearted and receive divine blessings fully. Let me repeat that one more time. People exist because of kami, and kami exists because of people. Therefore, you should pray to kami about everything, including sicknesses and problems. Whether it is an emergency or not, practicing faith is to have a heart like kami in your everyday life. Praying to kami by putting your hands together is not the only way to practice faith. A single heart means one heart. So be sure you do not go astray by having a double heart. Depending only on Tenchi Kata no Kami is having a single heart. You should be single-hearted and receive divine blessings fully. This is from the Jinkyu Kyogo. When we think about Kyoso-sama, or the founder, the source of teachings, here's one of the things that's amazing. He used to go to shrines and temples before encountering Tenchi Kata no Kami. After encountering Tenchi Kata no Kami, truly he was one, I believe, truly realizing who Tenchi Kata no Kami was, he was devoted. One heart, nothing. He didn't go astray. I think there's times that he might have questioned things, but he came right back to, no, I can't. My family has received this type of favor. Why would I go astray? I've been receiving this kind of blessings. I realize these blessings. Why would I go astray? Haruko Sensei was similar too. You know, she had faith in different gods and Buddhas at one point in her life. Our family comes from a Buddhist background. My grandmother was from a Jodo Shu background, my grandfather from a Shingon Shu background. My grandfather helped to build, I think it's the Kohala Shingon Mission. And I think one more temple in Kona. He and his workers helped to build that. And yet, when my aunt realized the blessings, when she was able to see the blessings around her, recognize and acknowledge the blessings, not the favors. The favors came after with her eyes healing, with her becoming herself, her being able to see her believers receiving okage. I truly believe she was single-hearted. She said in her transcripts, just before she was to enter into the Lord, now she had only been here for, I think, 3 or 4 years, but within 3 or 4 years, she said there were about 90 members here at this church. But because of her and her prayers for her family, because of her and her prayers for her believers, because of her and her single-heartedness for wanting people to receive okage, I really believe this is why this church is still here. I believe this is why someone like Reverend Ishii came in the interim before the Yanos came. I believe this is one of the wonderful reasons why the Yanos are here. And her legacy continues. And it's not just about her legacy. It's about that single-heartedness to Kami-sama. How can we share this with other people and have other people understand that by following, living the teachings, sharing our hearts with Kami-sama on a daily basis, we can find salvation within ourselves. You know, when the teaching talks about sharing your problems, if you ever see me drink, this is I look like a crazy Not because of the way I drive, but you'll see me literally talking out loud, like, you know, Kami-sama, today's service, oh, I don't think I did well. Oh, Kami-sama, this kid just irritated the crap out of me. Oh, Kami-sama, that. You'll see me literally talking. I look like a crazy person. I actually have people just staring at me. You know, I stop. I'm not realizing I'm talking to Kami-sama. I turn to the left and like, oh, yeah, you think I'm crazy. So I do this. I do this. Like, oh, yeah, I'm talking on the phone. You know, just to make people think I'm not that crazy. I'll be in the classroom, and my colleague who's next to our wall, you can tell my voice is loud, and our wall isn't very thick, so she's like, are you talking to someone over there? Like, yeah, I'm talking to my mom. No, don't worry, I'm talking to my mom. I'm talking to Kami-sama. But I think we learn. I think I've grown to that point that I'm not 100% Ishi. Are there times I waver? Absolutely. We're human. Did Haruko Sensei ever waver? Absolutely. And we see that in her documents. She was constantly being questioned by that panel of white men. Are you planning to repatriate? Are you going to go back to Japan? Do you want to go back to Japan? Japan's not even her home. She just had dual citizenship. They kept asking her that question, I guess trying to break her down. So finally, she sent an otoloki to the third Konko-sama through the Red Cross, and the third Konko-sama responded, repatriate at your own will. What a statement. Repatriate at your own will. Here, she's at this point that she might be cracking. She's questioning things. And Konko-sama then puts her on the wall. Here, she's on the fence. Repatriate at your own will. So at this point, she could have said, okay, I'll go back. Or no, I'm staying. Much like Kikoe-sen says, she stayed. If she had gone back to Japan, I don't know what would have happened. Who would have taken over this church? Or if this church would have even exist? I don't know what my family would have been like. Would my mom and dad have gotten married? Would I have been born? Would my cousins be okay? Because she was the pillar of faith for my family. Pillar of faith. And so I'm so grateful she made a decision to stay. The third Konko-sama gave her a test. This is your test. How you respond is up to you. Kami-sama will have a backup plan for you, but it's up to you. She chose to stay. Today I chose not to tell the stories of the okage that has happened here at this mediation, because I wanted to focus on what we could learn from her, from that point of salvation, how salvation helped her become the woman that she was. She was supposed to be and was upon her passing. The humility that allowed her to remember her foundation, because we often forget our foundation. We forget our parents. You know, she was so amazing to travel that 3+ hours to visit her spiritual parents and then her birth parents and her ohana in Makali. And her single-hearted devotion to Tenchi Kamikami. So that not her, wasn't for her, for all of us to receive the okage we have been receiving today. And many of you, if you knew her, or you're from family who knew her, you are a product of that prayer. Let me repeat that again. You are a product of that prayer. And even if you didn't know her, even if you weren't here at that time, still honoring this founding minister, this woman, learning from her life, learning from what she was able to contribute, not just to herself, but to all of us, I think can only help us in our faith and in our daily lives. I truly believe that in my heart of hearts. And in my daily life as a full-time high school teacher and as a minister and caring for 2 churches, there are times I just want to say, I'm tired. I'm tired. And yet I think about this woman who dedicated so much to helping people receive okage, to help them to acknowledge the blessings around them, and helping them to live a better life. And so today, if we take 3 things away from today, we know that salvation helps us more than just the physical, but with our mental, physical, spiritual, and our own self. We know that humility helps us to remember our foundation, our parents, the source of our lives, and Kami-sama. And being single-hearted means to have this connection with Kami-sama, just as she had a connection with Kami-sama, means to have this connection with Kami-sama. Being able to share everything, not looking crazy like me. You don't need to look crazy like me. But maybe, in your own ways, maybe when you're taking a number 2, you might want to spend some time talking to have perfect time. I mean, you have nothing better to do unless you have a cell phone. You have the cell phone when you're doing number 2. I'm looking at you. Oh, he does. You? Oh. Maybe put it aside and go, hey, Kami-sama, can we have a 1-to-1, please? Perfect time. You gotta go cool. Maybe you get constipated. You go, Kami-sama, perfect time to be cheated too. But to find that time to share your heart with Kami-sama. I promise you, after 4 years of being in San Diego, 4 years of being separated from my parents, I quote Reverend Kyoji Konko, is so important to realize we are being prayed for. We are being prayed for. I know my parents prayed for me. I know Sensei prayed for me. I know Koichi Sensei from the Konko Church. I know I'm being prayed for. So yes, I can be tired. I know I'm being prayed for. I know that I have no room to grow because I am enveloped in prayer. And so are each and every one of you. So today, I don't know what church you may come from. I know most of you are from here. But I ask you to reflect on the founding minister of your church, to think about it, to ask questions about that person, and try to think about what can we learn from that person's life. Or whether it be the second head minister, third head minister, what can we learn from this particular minister's life? What have they contributed? What can we learn and gain from that person that we can use in our church?